Hello everybody, Rick Malava here with a short how-to video that will hopefully help Yuka, one of the users in our forum, out. And Yuka's new, I hope I'm saying the name right, it's either Yuka or Juka. But anyway, this user's new to Maya, and he's having an issue of after changing the orientation of an object and freezing its transforms, he loses the local orientation of the local pivot of the object and is struggling to figure out how to either reestablish the local pivot or move things along elements within the object. I'm not quite sure which based on the question, but I can show you ways that you can accomplish both of those things. So first, let's start out and demonstrate what the issue is that we're talking about here. If you take a cylinder, and I created at the origin, you notice that it has a pivot that matches the world axis, right? The y-axis matches the direction of the world y-axis as well as the x and the z. If I now take this thing and I randomly move it someplace, right, you see it now has a local axis that no longer matches the world axis, and its transform values, right, are an indication of where it's been moved from the origin relative to the origin where it started out. Now, if for whatever reason I want to zero these transforms out, so this part, if it gets moved, I can just enter 0, 0, 0 and or zeros for all these values and get this object to go back to this position, I would freeze its transforms by going to modify freeze transforms. And now you can see the issue that Yuka's talking about. The local pivot of this object now matches the world axis again. All of its transform values zero out, so if I now move it anywhere, I can just hit 0 and it will go right back to where I put it. But I've lost the local orientation of the pivot of this object. So even if I go into W and hold the left key down, I'm sorry, W and hold the left key down and go to object, which it was already at, you see it doesn't, it's the same as world. Object and world are the same now. So now I'm kind of boned if I want to move something along what used to be the y-axis of this cylinder. So there have been tools that have been added within Maya so you don't have to change the pivot, realign the pivot again, but and let me show you those first. Let's say I wanted to take this vertex right here, and I want to move it along this edge. What you can do is go into the move tool, and you can actually say by clicking here that you want to align to a specific edge or to a point or to a face. So I can align it to an edge, and I can pick this edge, and you see now I can move that vertex along the orientation of that edge. I can also come over here and I can do that again, go to align to edge, and I can say pick one of these radial edges, and now you'll see the x-axis is aligned to that radial edge. Okay, so that's one method you can move things around based on elements within the object, an edge, a face, whatever. But let's say I want to get the original pivot of this object. If I pick the object again, you can see its local pivot is now still messed up. It's still based on the world axis. So let's say I want to try to reestablish that orientation of the y-axis. So and just for sake of demonstration, I'm going to make sure I'm on object so you can see the pivot change when we do this. So I want to reestablish the orientation of the y-axis. So what I can do is create a unit cube at the origin. And then you go up to modify, and you go to, it's now called snap together. It used to be called snap to faces or something like that in older versions of Maya. If you've got 2015 or below, I believe this is called snap to faces. But if you pick the snap together tool, and then we select the base face of the cube and this top face of the cylinder, doesn't matter where, and hit the enter key, the base of the cube now snaps to the top of the cylinder. And if I pick the cube, you see its local axis is now, its y-axis is oriented the way the local axis of the cylinder was. But if I pick the cylinder, it's still pointing, it's still matching the world axis. So what I want to do is I want to try to get this thing to match the cube's orientation. So if I take the cylinder and then I shift select the cube and I hit the P key, I've now made the cylinder a child of the cube, right? So if I go over to my Outlook window here, you can see I've got the cube and the cylinder is a child of it now. And so if I take the cylinder and I now come up here and I modify freeze transforms again, watch what happens to the cylinder's local pivot. You see it changed, and it now matches the pivot of the parent, which is very close to what the original orientation of the local pivot was for the cylinder. So now I can take the cylinder, and you also notice as long as it's parented to the cube, its transform values are still all zeroed out, as though it had its transforms frozen. But as soon as I take the cylinder and I shift P to unparent it from the cube, right, now you see its transform values switch back to being relative to the origin again. Okay, and so now I can take the cube and delete the cube, and now the cylinder's pivot has been local pivot has been reestablished. And if I go back to world, you'll see it all has a world pivot, and it now has an object pivot, which is depends on the software package you're using. Some call it local, some call it object, just like elements within an object like edges and vertices and faces are called elements in some packages and called components in others. But anyway, I hope that helps you out in terms of reestablishing the local pivot orientation within Maya using the snap to faces, snap together tool, and then parenting the object that you want to reorient its pivot to an object that has its local pivot oriented the way you want, and then refreezing the transforms on the child object, and it will match the pivot orientation of the parent. So there you go. I hope you found this helpful, and good luck switching over to Maya, and I hope you enjoy modeling in Maya and the Simply Maya site. Thank you.